You guessed it. It's another S10 LS swap. Really nothing special to say about this one though. It's just a factory 5.3 liter out of a 2000 Chevy Tahoe. Everything is factory on it. It's got the factory cam, factory injection, factory wiring harness even. I even used the original equipment fuel pump out of the Tahoe, which does fit in the strainer, just for the record. Anyway, one of the things I did end up changing in here was the exhaust, because the original cast iron manifolds wouldn't fit, they wouldn't clear the frame. So I did some tube headers that come up and over, but I'll be honest, I don't like them at all. These don't fit at all. They're miserable. Driver's side I guess isn't so bad, but passenger side, number 4 spark plug, you'll never change it without taking that exhaust header off. So why don't we poke around under the hood a little bit, and I'll show you some of the mistakes I made, some things that could have been better, and that way if someday you decide to build one of these, maybe it'll make it a little easier for you. Let's do it. One of the most important things with this pickup is I wanted the hood to close and not have any big holes cut into it. So the first thing I ran into was this alternator. When you close the hood, it wouldn't get anywhere as close to touching the latch. And it turns out that there are different alternators that fit in this configuration. This one happens to be out of a 2002 Chevy pickup. It is a little bit smaller. In fact, it's 3/4 of an inch shorter than the one that was in the Tahoe. Once I put this in there, it clears the hood just fine. One of the other issues I had here was that I didn't have any of the piping or anything to pick up air from the fender over here where it's nice and cool. So I ended up with this, open face air filter like this, which is pulling heat right out of the radiator. It's not good for economy or power or anything like that, but it's enough to make it run for now and keep the engine safe so it's not sucking up a bunch of dirt. The only problem I ran into here, and if you end up doing one of these conversions yourself, the hood touches right here and it pushes this down just a little bit, which is just enough so whereas it rubs on the tensioner pulley, which is right directly below this. That's why I'd like to get that piping to come over here into the fender area so I can relocate all of this stuff and not have it all so close to the belt drive. You're currently looking at the passenger side header. You would think that the worst spark plug to get on over here is going to be the rear one, but that's actually one of the easiest ones on this design. Right behind the front tire, a couple extensions, you can totally get on the number 8 plug, and the wire too. The worst one is actually number 4, this one right here. That header is so close to the tip of that spark plug wire, or actually to the spark plug, that even if you didn't have the wire on at all, and you tried to thread the plug out, before the plug was out of the head all the way, it would be touching that header. So I tried my best to, I'd say, finesse that tube a little bit, and no matter what I did, it's just not working out. So my options are either to cut the thing out and weld my own tube in there or something, but really what it needed to do is just come out a little further. There's plenty of space over here, and these were for an S10 conversion, so I'm not sure why this space over here wasn't used for that tube to come out. Other than that, this number 2 is easy to get on, number 6 and number 8 are easy to get on, but 4 is impossible. So that one's not going to be fun. And yes, my wire is right up against the header there, and that's not good. I do have some insulators for the boots, which I'll put on there to help them not burn off on the manifold, but so far so good. I also ended up modifying the evaporator box just a little bit. Fortunately, there's some space behind there that's kind of not needed, and the air conditioner and everything still flows just fine, even with the modification, but I cut out about 2 inches of that and remade an aluminum plate that kind of covers up the hole that I made, and it allows for me to have a little bit extra space for that number 8 tube header back there, and the coil also. I'm going to try to do this one by hand without making you guys dizzy, but if you look right at the back of the compressor there, that's where the notch starts. Now I should have made that notch probably another 1/2 inch back, because once the engine leaned back, once I had the cross member done, it's actually about 1 millimeter away from there. It's very close. So I'd like to, if I ever have this engine out, I would like to fix that. Okay, now we're down here looking at the air conditioning compressor from the bottom. You can kind of see that notch that I made there. Something else I ran into was that there are actually two different compressors for this engine. Well, there might be a lot more than two. But the one that I originally had from the Tahoe had a much bigger clutch on the front of it. And it made it so whereas it was going to run into that idler arm for the steering, and I just couldn't use it. This one is much smaller, and I don't honestly know what this is off of, but it is from a 5.3. So that's a look at the one that worked for me anyway. Okay, well this might look like a giant wiring mess, and that's because it is. It is all factory to the Tahoe though, minus a couple of changes that I had to make the electric fans work, and I wanted performance mode with a push button on the dash. I can show you how I did that, or you can look at a site called LSSwapped.com. They have all of the information that you could ever possibly want for swapping an LS into pretty much anything. Now, I did end up finding a good way to mount the computer down here, so whereas I can make changes to the wiring harness if I have to. There's a couple things I might do here yet, like manual shift mode and things like that, so I wanted it accessible. The fuse box is mounted down to the inner fender well, and I'm still going to probably print a cover or something for it. Cruise control does work, and we even have the wiper sprayer bottle mounted. Yes, okay. So you're looking at the front number one cylinder there. It's kind of tucked behind these wires here. I'll see if I can move some of that. Nope, that's all pretty cinched down. Anyway, that front tube did clear really easily. I didn't have to modify that one. Now number 3, on the other hand, that one took some beating to clear that steering shaft. Now that steering shaft is out of a Jeep CJ, if I remember correctly, and it was a little bit better designed than the S10 one. However, it did throw off my steering alignment and all that stuff, but that might be for another video. So I'll try to sneak back in here, and here is number 5. That one took some beating too to get it to clear the steering shaft there. And then the last one back here clears just fine. Didn't have to make any changes to that one at all. It may look like those spark plug wires are really close to the steering, and you'd be right. This is another thing I wish I wouldn't have done. I cut out this support up here because originally this radiator had fans on the back of it, and I was trying to pull it forward as far as possible to get it away from the water pump and the hoses and everything. In the end, we moved the fans up front, which gave me a whole bunch of room in the back, and I wouldn't have had to cut that out. So if you don't need to cut that out, that would be wonderful, because I mean, if you're trying to retain air conditioning, that sits right underneath there anyway. So I don't know what I was thinking there, but I shouldn't have cut that out. Here's a view of the electric cooling fans that we installed. Both of these are run off of a relay that's controlled by an output on the computer. Now, in the tuning software that we use, you can actually set an on and off temperature for these, which is super handy. I think I have it set to 198 right now, but they cool very well. And I currently have them programmed to come on both at the same time, at the same temperature, and turn off at the same time. So those worked out really well. Here's a view of the inside of the S10. This is the digital dash, of course. This is a touchscreen thing. It's actually an Android stereo head unit that I found online. It was about 150 bucks. Has a USB port on it, and that allows me to feed information from my Arduino into it, and then I'm running Real Dash on the Android, which interprets that data and allows me to make my own gauges and set it up. Now, this is actually one I purchased. Somebody built this. It's a pre-built one, and so it already kind of does everything, but I had to go in and calibrate everything to make it look correct. But the overall graphic design of it was all pre-made. Now, you can go and build your own from scratch if you want to. Have your own gauges with your own pictures and have it fire up with a picture of your car on it, whatever you want. Real Dash, I think, is probably one of the coolest ones out there as far as the ability to pull information from so many different sources, and it worked well. This is probably its 6th month running, and now here we are in the cold. Yesterday it was 13 below zero. I came out, fired up the truck, and the dash started up right away. It worked fine, and all the touch stuff works fine, so I'm pretty happy with it. Well, that's all the time we have for today. If you guys have any questions on any of the stuff we looked at, I'll be glad to answer them. Just post them down in the comments. As far as the truck goes, there's all sorts of work to be done yet, so there will be future videos. There's tuning to be done, there's wiring nightmare out there under the hood, there's interior work, maybe even a rear axle. Anyway, until then, thanks for watching.